Oh, it's all fun and games this morning. Oh, Kate, you might be the star of this morning. I've just got a quick request that will require your expertise. Oh, and Mary's in that, I know, in that fabulous coral. Oh, Mary, you look amazing. Oh, and by the way, Kate, what glamour have you come in? I've just seen sparkles. Sound, you bugger. Sound.
It's a sparkly, hippie, reminiscent of the 60s. That's how I feel this morning.
Well, I tell you what, this is going to be your moment, I think. Kate, you look gorgeous. Mary, doesn't she look amazing? What a great colour combination that is. Oh, I'm very impressed. And can I say, you two are on the bit of my screen directly under each other too, and you're both in the same sort of colour hue, the coral and the pink.
White hair, pink top.
Oh, fashion forward, Mary. Fashion.
It's a good look.
It's a great look. Can I say, I wouldn't take that risk, and it looks amazing on the pair of you. Mind you, risk for me is anything not black. So I have a very, very narrow parameter of risk, Mary. Oh, and our Jelly's in. How are you, darling? Are you well? Oh, I adore you. It's lovely to see you. Going well?
Yes.
Oh, it's good. And see, look at the colour hue continues. Look at this. The corally pink, that's fantastic. And the man, the myth, the legend that is Doug has joined us. Doug, you are not wearing coral.
No, I'm standing out a bit like you, I guess, but it's going to be a 40-degree day here, so I'm in the shade with the fan on.
And look, mate, I did see that when I was at the gym on the news this morning, like 40 degrees. It's very rare for the territory to be less than Adelaide, but Adelaide does show those weird peaky days, doesn't it? Like 40.
Yeah, so I'm going out for a birthday dinner tonight, so hopefully the shade would have come through by then.
Unbelievable. Well, we're thinking of you, mate. And Doug, all I'd say is I can't speak on this matter formally with my dean hat on, but currently the scholarship processes are in place and the ranking is being undertaken, Doug.
Oh, cool. Cool.
And just so we know, College, Doug is in that list. So we'll keep everything crossed for Doug. It's fantastic. Queen Gay's in us with a very, very calming blue. Good morning, Gay.
Good morning, Tara.
Oh, you look gorgeous. Very, very excited. And our Paul's in. Paul and I have some homework this week to get good evening, good sir.
Hello, how are you?
Paul, have you dressed for this call? You look amazing for the middle of the night, Paul.
I have. It's been one of those weeks and I haven't got changed from work yet. So I'm currently going through 60 essays to mark in our reading week. So yeah, it's a long one.
Yeah, and look, brother, we have all been there. A few of my students, one for Piper, is doing that as well. Paul, and I mean, is this formative or summative feedback? Where are we in your term? Is this formative feedback for your students? Oh.
Yeah, formative, and then the summative is in about 3 weeks' time. So they're just getting feedback on their essays.
Yeah, whereas Piper's doing the summative, so it can be a little bit more truncated as an assessment feedback protocol. Oh, so Paul, you and I have homework that we're going to talk about today. Of course, Jane's in, who we all just love just a little bit, although it's increasing, Jane. It's increasing. Good morning to you, madam. Do I get a hi, Jane? Do I get a hello, Jane?
Hello, everyone.
Oh,
so good to see you all. I don't have any ontological question today. I'm listening and supporting us all.
Well, we've got some fun. We've got some fun, different things to talk about today. And of course, Megan and I have been in touch most hours of most days this week. Now, Megan, it's all been happening on Norfolk Island this week. How have you managed the visitors, shall we say, naming that ABBA, that great last ABBA album, The Visitors?
Well, visitors actually arrived this coming Tuesday. So I've had day visitors, but it's this coming Tuesday. I'm plagued with visitors from then until the end of the year.
Because this is your day job as coach, isn't it? So this is your real sort of job, really.
Part of it is that begins on the 30th of November because I'm running a retreat for a week. Yeah. But the worst thing for me is I now have to clean my house before people are actually staying in my house.
Always a shocker, isn't it? It's like enforced house cleaning. It's a nightmare, isn't it?
I don't like it, no.
Can I just say, wouldn't you love in your life at a certain point you go, I'll be running a retreat this month? I mean, wouldn't it be great if, that's, where does that phrase come from? And only in Megan's life is that a reality. Paul's the same as me going, how do I make that stuff happen? Unbelievable.
You've got to move to Norfolk Island.
Don't tempt me, mate. Don't tempt me. And look, we will start with Josh. As I said, my whole desk is filled with sort of queries and questions. People have given us a stack of stuff to do today, team. So I don't know how we're going to do it all, but we need to start with the legendary Josh. Josh, are you comfortable to tell your Authenticate story? I told it obviously in the email this morning to all my great students, but Josh, do you want to tell the journal plagiarism Authenticate story in some form?
Yeah, sure. Timing was excellent. It was pretty funny. I submitted an article this week to a particular journal, and it was an email submission, and they replied back in about 24 hours later saying that they detected plagiarism in the document, and they attached a screenshot of they used Turnitin, and it was just the very top of the report, and they circled the 40%, and that was all they did. And so they sort of went, no, bad. And so they said, your article's rejected, and if you want to, you can try and sort out the plagiarism and resubmit it or something. But thanks to Tara, I was able to just reply and go, no, this is all good. 40% if you actually, scroll down on the document, or I attached my own Authenticate report and just went, have a look at this. It's mostly the reference list. If you take out the reference list, it goes down to 3%, and that's quoted material throughout the actual document. And just said, a large reference list is not a bad thing in an article. And to their credit, they came back within a day and completely changed their tone, and they went, oh, that's fine. We've reconsidered. It's all good. It's out to review. So, yeah, fascinating.
Oh, and see, Josh, this is what I want for every single student and every single colleague, to be honest. That's why we've paid the big bucks to get Authenticate for every student at CDU, right? And every supervisor, so that you have control over your life. So somebody doesn't say, desk rejection. It's a desk rejection, which is like, we're going to take you out the car park. We're going to end your life, right? So a desk rejection on the basis of plagiarism is like having herpes, right, in a swingers club, right? There's no way out of this, right? But you went, nah, let's put it through Authenticate. Let's create an alternative data set and show that they are wrong. And then, as you said, they then came back going, oh, yes, actually, your data set's better than our data set. We'll send it out to review. Josh, it's unbelievable. And it happened this week as I'm talking about it with our crew at CDU.
Yeah, ridiculous timing. I think it was good, though. I'm hoping it'll prompt a bit of reflection on the journal in terms of having policies of arbitrary cutoffs. Because what stresses me more is how much that encourages people to not reference anything, which is just terrifying as a policy.
Oh, mate, we've got to write this up at some point. You keep doing this. I'll keep doing this work because I've got 2 videos, 2 outriders looking at this. So I've sort of got a data set ready to go. If you want to write the other half of it, Josh, you got a deal, mate. Fantastic. Now, Megan's straight in. Now, I'm excited, Megan. So where are we with you and Authenticate, mate?
Well, I'm really interested and scared, absolutely terrified. I know I would get that. I'd see that 40% and I think I'd crumble going, oh, my God, what have I done? But am I able to access before the 1st of January, Tara? How do I run my RP through it?
Oh, yes. So we were originally organising things for the 1st of January for our crew at CDU. So we've spent the big money, and it's a lot of money. My complaint about all of this is an organisation, Paul, called plagiarism.org owns both of these products that detects plagiarism. So it corporatizes plagiarism. Yeah. So they've got their Turnitin for the undergraduates and so forth, but now they've developed this more elite product called Authenticate, which they're selling to higher degree people like me and researchers. So Megan, we had everything organised from the 1st of January, but I rolled out these 2 sessions to get people oriented, and everyone's gone, can we use it now? So the wonderful Fiona Steele, my favourite person, Brabbers and Steele, she's the Steele vet, Brabbers and Steele. Fee is working on this today to get everybody access in the next week. So you simply then go to Authenticate, put in your CDU email address, and in out, shake it all about, we're winning.
That's absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to be terrified.
Well, see, this is what I mean about it's formative assessment. It's not summative assessment. So it's not hitting you over the head. You now have control over it. You whack your document in, you look at the report, no one else has to see it, and you make the iterative changes. This is where we're at.
Yeah. And I did read somewhere that you can exclude the references.
Boom.
Because I absolutely copy references, you know, where it says cite. Yeah, yep, I copy that. So that's going to show up as plagiarism if I include them.
Yeah, you can exclude quotes and exclude references, mate, and that's what you should do. And in Josh's experience, that's why it's just so, you know, Josh is a gift to our lives, is that Josh's example is great where a journal didn't click. You got to click exclude references and exclude quotes.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, it picks up legitimate referencing as plagiarism.
Yeah. And Josh, thanks so much for sharing that with us. That's it's wonderful to hear a real experience. So thanks, mate.
Oh,
No worries. Yeah, bizarre timing.
Bizarre timing. And the weird thing is, in that damn Outrider a couple of weeks ago, I said something like, I get really cross about journals doing a desk rejection. I think I did say that, or did I dream it, Josh? Where I said I get really cross.
No, you said it. I checked the Outrider. Yeah, you said it.
Yeah, I've always got to check, you know, was that an express thought? Oh no, I've got to stop myself, because it does make me furious. The journals don't look at the report. So learn, if you're going to use the software, don't use it as a sort of technologically determinist thing. But if you're going to use it as a technologically determinist thing, how about you learn the bloody software? Unbelievable. And look, I need to say good morning to Jess. Jess, oh gee, you look glamorous. See, look, we've got a bit of the coral motif continuing. Jess, how are you? We'll just check in with Jess.
Yeah, good. I finally got the approval for my research this week. Thank you, Tara. I know it went across your desk. So that was a good feeling. But I've done something really silly. I've kept ticking yes that I'd done the research integrity modules. I'm like, yeah, I did them like when I started, when I was super keen. I did all those modules. I realized they were academic integrity modules, and I've got to go back and do. So that's what I'll be working on today. I'll get those modules done.
And Jess, I tried to manage it for you when that form did go past my desk. I saw that, but I actually used the point that you'd had the research integrity conversation and chat with me.
Yes. Did you?
Look, I did.
I'm going to do that. I haven't replied yet, Tara. I'm going to do it today and then go, yep, here it is, done.
and Jess, just say you hadn't done the EPGM set. And, you know, you'll have to do that if you have to do that. But you didn't do the EPG one, but you did my research integrity set with me. So
yes. Okay. Thank you. I'll do the EPGMs. How long does it take? Surely. Usually these things don't take very long.
Oh, it's a bit laggy.
Oh, they've put lots of waffle in, have they? Okay. Sorry, did you write them?
Yeah, no, mate, trust me, I didn't. Paul, look, when I was working at Brighton, Paul, EPGM came a-calling, and I had to do, you know, they sit you in a lecture theatre and, you know, pretend you're like a head of a bank, you know, they're going to dress for it and offer commentary. And, you know, I was in one of those original academic integrity things, and I was at Brighton. But yeah, Jess, it's very, very, I mean, again, they're making money out of student fear, to be frank with you. So look, EPGM, okay, I'd give it a good solid 6.5 out of 10. It's great if you got nothing else, but there's more bespoke material for colleagues and for higher degree students, I would argue.
Yeah, and when you think it's my third time doing this, I'd hope I've got some kind of research integrity. What have I been doing? But we'll see. Maybe I'll learn all this stuff and go, wow, I had no idea what I was doing before. That's what I would like.
And of course, research integrity is a big umbrella. It can refer to data collection, data analysis. So, you know, have a go, Jess. If we got to do it, we got to do it. That's fine. If the old dean, who's a mate of yours, can say, actually, Jess and I have had like one-on-one engagements discussing this, then that's cool. But I certainly made a point in my sign-off about how fantastic your project is and what an outstanding international scholar you are.
Thank you, Tara. That means a lot. Thank you.
It's also true, and it just might stop the rubbish as well. So that's great. So colleagues, we've got so much homework. So when I see beautiful Beck's, we haven't seen Beck in ages. Love you, Beck. We're not seeing Beck yet. Mine's a bit of a goth moment. Paul, did I see that correctly this morning, that I think it's John Robb has written the history of goth?
I did see that as well, yes. Yeah.
I love John. I've met him actually. He was a good friend of my Redheads, but it's because Manchester, of course. So, and everyone in Manchester knows everybody in Manchester and Manchester music. But I tell you what, I might read that, Paul. We might do a bit of a. Can you imagine doing like a goth reading group? Everyone comes dressed. Fantastic. Right. So we've got homework for Paul, but we need to start with homework for Kate. Now, two wonderful human beings, Carol and Karen, have asked us, Kate, to talk about the PhD by prior publication. We've got a student who tried to enrol in the United Kingdom in a PhD by publication, but the publications had to be finished before the student enrolled, and they were unhappy with Australian qualifications, obviously, unhappy with Australian qualifications to allow entry. And so the student now has got in touch with Carol and said, you know, is this an option? And of course it is, but wanted us to talk about, Kate, what it's like from a student perspective. You know, now that you've finished and everything's done and everything's great, what advice would you offer to supervisors of a PhD by prior publication and students that are coming into this particular mode, darling?
Okay, well, I think some of the best advice you gave me, when I left that last university, I already had several peer-reviewed publications. Most of them I'm first author or sole author, but I do have several publications with other people, including ordinary publications, systematic reviews, and meta-analyses. Now, many of the topics sort of crossed over my topic, which was pressure ulcers, primarily in the aged. So I plucked out, with your advice, several publications just on pressure ulcers with me as first or sole author. And then you suggested before I enrolled at Flinders to get some more publications, peer-reviewed publications done. So I just put head down, bum up, and wrote and wrote and wrote. And that's the only good thing about COVID lockdown, to be able to just write from morning till night, because I couldn't go anywhere. And I think I got another 4 in that year. So I had a total of 11 peer-reviewed publications, and you taught me how to put them together, starting from the early one 20-odd years ago, and link the stories from one publication to the other, because they were all linked and I had no idea. And I had no idea when I met you what a PhD by prior publication was. Sorry. So that's, and it's different to the PhD by publication, which is what I was enrolled in at that last university. And I only needed to have 3 peer-reviewed publications for that PhD, and then I would have had a PhD. But that, as you know, didn't happen. But the last chapter of that PhD, I've actually plucked out and shortened it from about, I don't know, 6,000 words to just a paper, which is going to be published in the January 1st Asian Journal of Medical Sciences. So I've fiddled with it to just shorten it. So that's another peer-reviewed publication if I ever need another one, if I ever decide to do another PhD, which I won't.
I'll enroll you anytime, girlfriend. So Kate, let's just, so where Kate's talked about there is she came into the PhD by prior publication with her eyes wide open. So she'd had the legacy publications. She also then worked really hard for about 6 months to get these new ones to create that full arc. So she backwardly mapped where she wanted to be. So she then clustered those publications, and so you then present those publications, and in the PhD by prior publication, you have a contextual statement that can be about 20,000 words up to 40,000 words, where you draw the links between those publications and you demonstrate the SOC, the significant official contribution to knowledge. So keep going, Kate. How did you find the process? So for a student coming into this,
I loved it. I loved it because it was so orderly, and I'm a very orderly person. nurse, very orderly. But I did love the way you suggested I link all the publications together. So it's bigger than Ben-Hur because it started as pressure ulcers in aged care. So horrible bed sores in our elderly. But I expanded that to include the publications I had on pressure ulcers in public hospitals, out in the community, and aged care. So it covers absolutely everything. But in that, I introduced informed consent, which is the legal side of my life. Because we don't ever ask elderly patients if they agree to be repositioned every 2 hours throughout the 24 hours. And this opened up a whole new thing for me, a whole new section of my thesis, which is on sleep and sleep deprivation. Because when an elderly person goes into a nursing home, they're never told that from this day on, you will never, ever, ever be allowed to have a night's sleep, because we're going to reposition you every 2 hours so that you don't get pressure ulcers. And it's all bull, because that will not stop pressure ulcers, but what it does do is wake people up. We don't know how long they lie awake, but everyone would have experienced that revolting feeling of sleep deprivation where you cannot wake up. You just need another few nights sleep. But they're like that from morning till night. I've been into facilities really early in the morning. They're asleep at the breakfast table. They don't want to go on their bus trips. They don't want to do any activities because they're so damn tired, and they're sitting there with pressure ulcers anyway.
Shocking, mate. I think that's brilliantly done. And as Kate has said there, in some ways, the consent to treatment that, of course, is a dysfunctional treatment and creates sleep deprivation became in many ways her significant original contribution to knowledge when she brought these disparate papers together. So, colleagues, as we're caring for Carol and Karen, is there anything else you'd like to say or think about, all the colleagues on the call, about the PhD by prior publication? I mean, Paul, it came from the UK as the polys became universities, 88, 89 to 1992, and mostly colleagues used it, didn't they, Paul?
Yeah, and still now, I mean, I'm in a post-92 university, and they still would rather staff do it via prior publication than any other route of PhD.
Really?
Yeah.
I heard the term until I met Tara. I didn't know there was such a thing.
Well, see, this is... Go, Paul. Talk, brother.
I was just going to say, I wonder, certainly in my university, and I'm sure other universities are the same in the UK, they'd rather it by prior publication because they get publications out of it. They get ref data, and that's why they like.
You're supposed to publish before you enroll. Is that not correct?
There are two, darling. There are two modes. One is a PhD by publication that I'm not a huge fan on, because the traditional thesis has publication, so the actual difference I'm uncertain. And as I've said, and I'm sorry to be a controversial old cow, but the only disciplines that really like the PhD by publication outside of the ref in the UK are the disciplines where the supervisor co-writes with the student. So obviously they're hugely, aren't they, Megan? They're hugely supportive of PhD by publication, but PhD by prior publication came from the UK, Kate, for great colleagues who were great academics, great teachers, but in the poly system had never got the support to do a PhD. So, Paul, do you want to finish that thought?
Yeah, you're pretty much there, and it's still pretty, it's still as relevant now, I think, in post-92 universities in the UK than it has ever been. There isn't great support in those type of universities for PhD training or for staff to do PhDs. I've had a real struggle, and so they still would rather you do it by publication. That's just still, and actually at our university they'll fund you if you do it by prior publication or via publication, but they won't fund you if it's a standard PhD.
And that's our future coming. Yeah. So Jess, and also I see beautiful Sue Charlton on this call, in allied health, in all the allied health professions, this is going to be a big deal. So for all of you in these disciplines, I need to also sort of train you to be a supervisor in PhD by prior publications, because this is going to allow our professions and our professionals to get a credentialed PhD in the next 10, 15 years. What do you think? What do you think, Jess?
I find it all really confusing. The different, I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Tara. I still don't really, I'm doing a PhD by publication, but I just don't really get the difference between that and a normal PhD. I'm just writing them the same way, but using it as a chapter, but it's also actually a paper. And yeah, but I do like the thought of the research getting out there as it's being written. So that, because I'm in the state at the moment where you want to be doing this, but you think, what if someone's doing the same idea at the same time, and we just both go, whichever one of us gets published first is the winner, So if you're publishing along the way, you've got a bit more insight as to, yeah, this idea is already being done. This is what's happening.
And that is sort of true, Jess, but of course that can occur in the traditional thesis as well. And of course I'm only smiling because, and of course I can't show my thesis because it's in storage. My thesis is, how big is it, Jamie? Is it? Yeah, so it's a huge thesis. And I got 11 publications, singly authored 11 publications out of that thesis. And it is the gift that keeps on giving. There's sometimes a paragraph I take to this day and it becomes something else.
Yep.
So Jess, the notion that, and Paul, you and I'll talk about how we codify and lock down the ideas sonically in a sec for Jess. But Jess, there is no difference. The traditional PhD has always been with publications. Like 88, 89% of all PhDs have publications from them, right? And so it's not a different mode of thesis. At CDU, there is no specialist regulation, policy or procedure for a PhD by publication, because it exists in the traditional thesis.
Yeah. And that blows my mind that you did independent publications. You would have had supervisors, Tara. I didn't even think that was a possibility. Your supervisors are in it with you.
Jamie, do you want to take this while I just return my small intestine back to my body? Jamie, you as the physicist, talk to beautiful Jess.
Hi, Jess.
Hi.
I'm sorry I was late arriving. Are you working in STEM?
No, I'm allied health psychology.
Okay. So I'm going to do that. When I was a lad, and we walked uphill, both directions, 20 miles barefoot in the snow, etc. Normal was the traditional PhD, but normal was not publishing as you went. Normal at Newcastle Uni in the 80s was, you do your PhD, you write your dissertation, and then while it's being examined, you write a bunch of manuscripts and you publish them. I was lucky that I was my PhD supervisor's very first student, and he came from the UK, and he said, we're going to do it differently. We're going to publish as we go. And it made all the difference at the end, because when I applied for postdocs, I can't compete with Tara because I wasn't singly authored, but I did get 9 out of my PhD. And that made all the difference. When I was applying for postdocs, they were racing to get me on board because I had demonstrated that I could see research to outcomes. Whereas all of my peers who would write up when they were finished, first of all, they were applying for jobs, and the first job they could get, they were out, and they had other distractions and they didn't publish as much. But also, the examination of the thesis was so much easier for the examiners because the peer review process has been done by publications. Yeah. So there's lots of reasons to do it. In STEM in particular, I don't know about other disciplines, but some academic supervisors will try and dangle that over you as a stick in a way. You need to publish. You need to publish as much as possible. And don't forget, I'm a co-author, right?
So do you want me to do the research integrity stuff now? So Jess,
yeah.
No human can be added to an article if they haven't done 2 of 3 things. Been involved in research design, 1, data collection and analysis 2, and substantive writing and editing 3. To be an author on a paper, you have to do 2 of 3. That is the Australian Code of Conduct, Research Conduct. It's also part of the Vancouver Protocol and its antecedents and its family as it's moved around the world. So Jess, my supervisor, so when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I had a truly appalling supervisor, a creepy mongrel of a man who had thankfully is now resigned, retired, and I will dance upon his grave when he leaves us. And and the second week of that enrollment, Jess, he said to me, "Oh, everything you write, Tara, I'll be an author on it." And of course, I went to the Vancouver Protocol and said, "If you're not writing one word of this, then you are not an author on it," right? So I then delayed a bit, and he got bored and went off to another university, and I published solely because he didn't read a word of it, Jess. I developed my project. I did data collection and analysis, and I wrote it. So I'm not saying you don't write with your supervisors. For example, Megan and I, we've got some good plans in place to write together, but we are writing together. Together, we're developing those 3 elements. So you're only an author if you've got 2 of the 3 components.
That's really interesting to know. That's very interesting to know. So when I need someone to help me with the literature review, to do independent checking of references and stuff, that's something my supervisor could do, because I've sort of pushed back and said, you'll be able to find someone. Maybe there's another student that could help you with that. But potentially that's someone on my supervisory team, and that could be their input.
And darling, you can supervise. So for example, a lot of my students are on this call. Formally, I supervise them. You can supervise. You read everything. You care for them. You do deep editing. I've done it with a lot of the people on this call. And that's supervision. I don't need authorship for that. That's part of being a supervisor. We talk, we chat, I suggest readings, I read, I edit, I draft. That's what a supervisor does. That's different.
But it's not an author.
But it's not an author. It's a supervisor.
You're blowing my mind here, Tara.
Can I touch the middle ground in the middle? So I co-authored with my supervisor because the project was funded from grants that he got, but he was an engaged supervisor. So he knew that in order to push the forefront of the program, the research program, he had to be actively engaged and involved. So if you have supervisors who have claim to the field of research that you're working in, you know as a student that they must be engaged and they must be involved in the design, or they must be involved in the collection, or they must be involved in the writing. If you know that, you're forewarned and forearmed.
Yeah, absolutely right. And Jess, just to clarify, but by the way, welcome to our marriage, Jess. Just to clarify, in the Australian Code for the Responsible Conduct of Research, just getting a grant it is not a claim for authorship. It has nothing to do with authorship. It says it in the code. Just because I've got the dough is irrelevant. As Jamie said, the good, ethical, decent academics, which are, I would hope, 95% of us, do the work required, know what the benchmarks for authorship are, and then make that happen. Are we helping, Jess?
Very much. Yeah, you've given me some power to push back and say, well, can you read? And because I'll get drafts back that just say, oh, change this a little bit like this, but they could be potentially giving edit suggestions and things like that.
That's what a supervisor does, Jess. It's a very, very important role. That's what I do with Megan every weekend when I'm doing work for our Monday meeting. I go through and do that editing and drafting for her. She is author of everything she produces. Thanks for playing. We'll come back to Jess. We'll go to Josh and then Kate. So good on you, Jess. You're a rock star. So Josh, mate, where are you on this, brother?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. This was a huge aspect of my candidature, navigating authorship. I come from health sciences, so probably quite similar to you, Jess, where there is a culture and an overt assumption of co-authorship. And I just think do your best to arm yourself with policy, like really read in detail the co-authorship stuff so you know exactly where everything stands in terms of you being on the right side of the fence with stuff. And yeah, pick your battles as well with this, because it can cause a lot of drama. At the same time, it can cause a lot of drama.
Can
But
imagine.
yeah, but try and stand your ground with it, because once you finish your PhD, your supervisors are not going to be looking after your career. You're going to be looking after your career. So, do whatever you need to do to push yourself through it, and don't worry about upsetting other people in the process. I'm happy to talk offline more with you, Jess, if you want to, because I have a lot of experiences myself with this, and it's messy.
Gosh, thank
when the
you.
expectations don't align. Yeah.
My understanding was that people just understood that the last few authors on the paper probably didn't do much. That was my understanding.
Yeah, and I've also heard the justification of the last author is the person that pays the article processing charge. I've heard that at my uni a few times before.
And see, Josh,
as well.
what gets upsetting is the last author in the experimental sciences, that's actually a distinguished role. The last author is the head of the lab. And so that role is a special one, which has meaning. So the idea that we're sort of, I love what Jess just said, that, I assume the first author does everything and the rest of the authors didn't do much, eh? So, but of course, Jess, can I give you the currency of this? Those second, third, fourth, 10th, 12th, 15th authors, whenever that paper is cited, they get the full citation on their citation record in Google Scholar. Do you see what I'm saying? So whether you're the first author or you're the 12th and someone cites you, you still get the full citation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, Jess, don't fear. I had a lot of justification coming to me, and one of the things that really scared me for a while was, you need my name on the end of this for this to go anywhere. And the first time I published independently, it went straight through peer review in a Q1 journal in a month. So don't listen to the intimidation that you need a name on it. Yes, that might help sometimes with peer review, but you can absolutely publish on your own in journals as a PhD candidate.
Most journals use double-blind peer review, double-blind. That's not about vodka usage. That's the reader's name is removed from it. The author's name is removed from it. Double-blind. So no one knows. And just always remember, to me, my supposedly big name supervisor said, oh, yes, you've got to add your name to it. Mate, my career's gone just fine. Just fine. Yeah, just fine. Jamie straight in and we go to gorgeous Kate.
Let's go to Kate first.
You sure? Queen Kate, go, darling. Oh, sound, babe. Sound. You just turned it off, gorgeous. Got it.
I do this every week. I've done this for a year, pressing the wrong knob. I do want to. I've been at uni back and forth since 1989. I've got 5 degrees. Nobody ever told me about the significant original contribution to knowledge that I had to put in until I met you. And even when I mentioned it to people in early years, because I'd heard something about this, they said, oh, no, people, they'll read, they'll know what you mean. But no, you told me to put it in virtually every paragraph, which I did. So thanks for the sock.
Well, the sock matters. And also, can I say, Kate, and I really, really do this, but I've received, Jamie, thousands, and I've been the sort of tens of thousands now, to be honest, emails from students around the world who had that one bit of data from me and then did their supervisors didn't tell them this, put it in the abstract, put it in the intro, put it in the conclusion, and they went straight through all minor corrections just with that one intervention. Go, Jamie.
Yep, I just want to say something. So I've got a couple of points now. My supervisor did tell me that it needed to have an original contribution, but he also said, I don't know what it looks like, but I'll know it when I see it, which was very useful in terms of coaching. Mind you, I was his very first student, so that's important to point out. I was going to say, Tara, we should probably talk about the grey areas because we're giving people very clear messaging. So we need to talk about exclusion and how to avoid exclusion, because you can get caught out
Yes, so the code of conduct is very clear. Thank you, Jamie. Where the grey area comes in, Queen Jess, and this might be important for you, is humans do have the right to contribute to an article. So one can't sort of go, this is man, this is man, and not give somebody the opportunity to be an author. So in your circumstances, particularly in allied health, going into medicine, nursing is another great example, physiotherapy, our gorgeous Sue's on the call. So Jess, so in other words, write the piece and it is yours, and use the code, as Joss has said, very clear at CDU, here is the code. I've trained all the supervisors, all the students, right? So everyone knows. But say, right, well, this is mine, and this by these criteria, this is mine. If you would like to contribute, please switch on tracked changes and contribute to this piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And does that happen after you've written your chapter for your PhD? Because if they're tracking changes and stuff, that's not my work for the PhD. This happens afterwards, does it? Or along the way?
You're amazing. So it happens along the way, Jess, what supervision is, and I'm going to involve Megan shortly. So Megan, prepare yourself. So Jess, there is a continuum of supervision. There are supervisors that are called light touch supervisors that basically do very little and go, yeah, fine, sort yourself out, right? And that's supervision, bless you. And then there are supervisors that get much more granular at a word by word, sentence by sentence level. I tend to do that, or I say insert this reading here. Sometimes, particularly in the early stage, pretty prescriptive. Now that's not authorship, that's supervision, Jess. Megan, I've done this for you. I've destroyed your life. Would you like to speak on this?
Oh, you've destroyed my life with great pleasure. So, so the tracking of the changes, I write, and I send it to Tara every Friday afternoon for her to go through. It comes back with track changes, and that's not just about spelling mistakes or syntax or grammatical errors. It's about, you haven't quite made your point here. Could you elaborate so we can fully understand this? Or what about international authors? Don't just concentrate on Australian authors. And I find that stuff incredibly helpful, because when I'm writing, I'm in the zone, I'm down the rabbit hole. And my husband has even come home and he's come up to my office, and I haven't been aware until he's touched me on the shoulder, because I just get into that zone and I forget everything else. So it's so helpful. I don't have another person on island that I can show my stuff with or share my stuff with. So for Tara to be doing what she's doing is absolutely fantastic. She also drops onto my Facebook page, because it's the easiest way for us to communicate. She'll drop in free ebooks, because for me to get a book here takes months. Absolutely months. So she'll put in the free stuff, and then I go through all of that. I read that. I might talk to her about it, or I just incorporate it into my research. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and that's supervision, Angel. I have no claim over Megan's work that she's doing at all. We will write together, but I am just her supervisor, Jess.
So that was my experience of my master's and thesis supervision. It was, but I thought PhD was different. You're like, this is you, off you go. And then we'll check in every month or whatever. And it was different. It might also be different because my supervisors, my primary is in a different discipline. She's an audiologist and I'm a psychologist. So a lot of it, she goes, oh yeah, I'm sure you're onto this. I'm not really sure about this content.
So Jess, I'm actually a mental health social worker, and Tara is cultural studies. So yeah.
No.
Yeah, so it's not a discipline difference. Yeah.
No, we're PhD supervision. It's on a continuum. The light touch can be from any particular discipline, my queen. And, my argument is, remember, I train supervisors and I say weekly meetings are best. Weekly feedback, iterative feedback is best. Gaining the scholarship. Gaining the scholarship of supervision is best. So making sure that supervisors are not saying what Jamie and I have said when I did my PhD, a data set of one, actually using research. What does the international research say about best international practice?
Yeah, okay. I'll have a chat with my because my supervisor is amazing. Like she's really lovely, and the whole team. We love our meetings because we always it's just such a lovely vibe, and
Brilliant.
it's a great team. But maybe they just think that I don't want that kind of level of support. Maybe I've been putting that across too.
Well, darling, whatever works, works. So the first thing is, you
Yeah.
can have the Fordist supervision, and that's great. And I'm a bit of a Fordist girl. I like systems and structures. And as a dean, Jess, I've got to be predictable. So, I have to have a weekly meeting with Megan because I'm not going to find half an hour through the rest of the week unless that meeting's there, right? So they're organised for the year. So me hoping for an accidental meeting is just not going to happen, right? But if it's working for you, that's great. But just have a ponder on the weekend. What suits your development post the COC? What does supervision look like for you?
Yeah, I will. I think weekly or fortnightly meetings would maintain momentum. I really think it would help for them.
The students that finish quickly meet weekly. That's what the international research shows. Straight to Kate.
Eunice and I had weekly meetings with Tara, 9:30 every Tuesday. Eunice and I are both nurses. Tara's not. But I would never have missed those meetings. It just kept us going. And you were so positive all the time because we both had rubbish supervision for so many years before. And we sailed through really quickly. Well, I think it was quick compared to other degrees that I've done. So thank you. Love you heaps, Tara.
Love you more. So Jess, I hope this is helpful. And also, Jess, on the CD YouTube channel, all supervision materials, all the materials I use to train supervisors is on that channel as well. Okay. So if you want to see what I'm saying to your supervisors, that's available for you to listen to as well.
So are you training all the supervisors, Tara?
Yes.
Because mine aren't familiar with you. One is.
Oh, that's a shame, isn't it? I'll have to speak with them. No, darling, what we do is we have a supervisory register, and every single human to remain on that register has to do a little bit of training every single year.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
They can choose what area of training they do, and there's, I think, about 40 or 50 things they can select today, but every year they have to do something to stay on the register.
Okay.
Now, Jess, you raised another issue which leads into where Paul and I were going to go, and we'll probably have bloody 3 different sessions on this, Paul. But Jess raised the question of publishing early because she needs to claim the area, claim the field, Paul. Now, one of the arguments you and I have used, and we've got a whole series of things to talk about sonic work in and around the thesis was our project, and the soundscape and sound-only theses. So, Paul, in terms of podcasts and sonic materials for Jess, should we start there and just say how on the way through a sonic session, a podcast can provide that sort of dated verification?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've done it a few times, and it's out there to see, and it really works in that you can do a monthly, weekly short podcast on the research you're doing right now, and it's available instantly to the world, and it's citable. So it's a really good, quick way of having referenceable material very quickly, and it's attractable and accessible instantaneously to a large audience. So you don't, although it doesn't go through the process of peer review, what it does is it talks and discusses your research, which I found really, really useful. It's that discussion with another, or a group of people like this. We could create a podcast from the office hours environment, and that could go out there, and then what people are talking about, it could be citable.
Right. So firstly, so Jess, we're winning, and this is called a thing, darling. I just yesterday morning at 2 a.m. in the morning recorded our new outrider on non-traditional research outputs, nitros, Angel. And in Australia, this is a very, very big deal, nitros. So if you and I record a podcast as part of our series on your thesis, then that is up on the internet, dated. That is your research. That's a nitro.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that.
And that's scaffolding material. So Paul, So we can do this, Jess. This is fantastic. This is the great thing to do. But Paul, do you want to, let's continue with this. So that's great for Jess. So in her scaffolding work to say, oh, this is a big idea, we quickly create a podcast. It's in the thesis, so it can be in your own reference list and bibliography. It's a nitro for your CV, Jess, and it also confirms it is your work. So Paul, we've talked a lot about in our lives together, the porous PhD and the role of the undulation beyond the text on the digital page or the analog page. What's your vibe on the use of sound in creating that soundscape for the doctorate?
Yeah, it's an interesting area, and I kind of also pose it to you as a possible philosophical question, in that how far can we push the sonic abilities of research in an output? And I spoke to Tara and said, look, can you create a thesis that is purely sonic? So could you create a 80,000 word equivalence of a podcast that is your thesis, is an audible version of your thesis, like an audio book? And there's a plethora of things to look at, policies and areas to look at. But it's an interesting thought to push the idea of that porous ability of your research. And we can look at, yes, that I'd say all of that kind of research is read on a screen now, so we can have hyperlinks and it can be a more interactive media. So why don't we push that further and make it interactive in that it's sonically interactive? And it can be used to prove further or kind of expand further points around what your research is looking at. So if it's looking at multimodality as a thing, well, why don't you present it in a multimodal fashion? If you're looking at, research or socially and culturally something that's within 2023, well, why don't you output it in a mode that is relevant in 2023 through a series of YouTube videos or and podcasts? So that was kind of my thought and query. And actually, not a lot of universities really have a policy on it yet. And I've found one thesis that's purely done on audio now, Tara. I've found one, and it's in the UK.
If you can send it to me. So there's so much saying, Paul, we're going to continue this through the next few weeks because this is huge and it's so important for students like Jess, but colleagues around the world to start to think in a multimodal fashion. So the policy we have in place right now is an artifact exegetical thesis. I do not believe our sound colleagues have used that artifact exegetical model as effectively as they should. Mainly filmmakers, mainly novels and so forth, novellas, epic poems. I've supervised an epic poem artifact exegetical thing. That was fun. But so for me, that's the dream. My hope is I enroll a student that does a soundscape, right? The soundscape people are magnificent. And then we have the written exegesis of about 40, 50,000 words, exegesis from the Greek meaning explanation. So what I've been working on with Paul is, can the exegesis be sonic? So the artifact is sonic and the exegesis is sonic. Now, Paul, we've got precedent for this because if you think about a novel, the novel is written, the exegesis is written, right?
Yeah.
They're the different modes of writing and presentation, but why would that be a big deal? And Paul, if we go right back to in fact, this comes from the University of Wollongong. Australia started this history in 1988, the DCA, the Doctor of Creative Arts. That initial DCA did not have an exegetical component. And through the 90s, the exegesis was added because there was an argument, Paul, okay, so we've seen a performance, and there were mainly performances at that time. What is the research in it? So those questions remained, and so the exegesis answered them. But Paul, what if we went sonic artifact, sonic exegesis, and I can write the policy on that. What's your view on that?
I mean, I think it's a great idea. And I was wondering earlier when we were talking about prior publication, in the UK, it's a bit fluffy around this, but a publication can be something that isn't necessarily a written article, right? It can be an artifact that's public, that's publicated. So a collection of podcasts could be your prior publication.
Correct. And Paul, when I wrote the PhD by prior publication regs for CDU, having known you in our conversations, basically since COVID, I've made that a possibility. So the PhD by publication does have in the policy, you can submit nitros, non-traditional research outputs. So that is possible in the policy now. Now, straight to Jess. Come on, Jess. Oh, sound, Angel, sound.
Okay, so now you've got me thinking. So part of my thesis is I'm creating some kind of educational tool to share with audiologists in trauma-informed space. And that tool was just something that would just sit off to the side. That's just work I'm going to do in all my spare time on my weekends. It's not actually part of my thesis. Hang on a minute, this is part of my thesis. This, and I'm limited in a way of, I can only just do this in the places that I'm going and do the training because I'll be there and it's me. If there's a sonic, like if there's this different component, I could create something that's multimodal, that is, I don't know, a webinar or something like that, that actually forms part of my dissertation and parts. That would be really exciting, and it would really tie it together, because people reading my PhD will be like, but what's she keep talking about? We don't, unless I write it out.
What you're explaining essentially is a practice-based research project. It's practice-based research.
That's exactly it. I can't do research unless it's practical and I'm doing it. It's just, I'm a practical person.
So, Jess, my dream always was the artifact exegesis thesis has nothing to do with the creative arts. It is a multimodal mechanism for presentation. And I've had speech pathology colleagues, etc., in allied health configure learning objects as the artifacts, and the thesis is the exegetical component. And at this point, I need to go to Jamie Quinton if he's still with us. I know you're busy as hell. But for example, Jess, in the hard sciences, so I've supervised in the hard sciences. How have I supervised in the hard sciences? Because Jamie and I supervised together a PhD student in biology. Do you want to talk about our Narelle, Jamie?
Sure, yeah. So it was actually quite interesting for us, Narelle and I, to engage with the creative PhD, because it was not something we would ever consider normally. It's not part of the Vista. And it was quite an educational journey for all of us, right? It was a very enriching experience for Narelle especially, but also for Tara and I. And I found it to be totally empowering. In fact, I came to the realization, and it's in one of our articles, that the conventional PhD is an artifact exegesis in disguise, if you think about it from a certain point of view. So, yeah, I only have good things to say about it.
So, Jess, darling, what I'd say is we've written 5 articles, the 3 of us, and they are properly done as the 3 of us. You'll see how we've done that when you read them. But we've written 5 articles. So it's Narelle Hunter, Jamie Quinton, Tara Brabazon, and one of those articles is titled, I think, Jamie, The Scientist, the Artifact, the Exegesis.
Yeah.
Okay, because what this would mean is that my PhD is accessible to the public. People in the public will actually be able to access and understand what I found and what I've learned, rather than just academics who are looking for this information.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, Jess,
I really like that.
The working model that Tara and I have been trying to work with regard to the creative PhD is the exegesis leads naturally into a book, and you can alter the audience for the book.
Yeah.
So straight to Paul, and then Thaisha will finish us off for the day. Paul, brother, we've had our first instalment gone pretty well so far.
Yeah, yeah, it's good, and it's great that it's the exploration has hit a light bulb for Jess, and I'm kind of with you in that I'm from the creative arts, so I'm used to the practice-based research models, but there is so much use for that style methodology in every discipline, because as educators, the practice-based part is what we do as teachers. That is what we do in our everyday life. As as scientists, it's what you do. It's the actual output which you do within your discipline is your job. So absolutely everyone should be using it as a model, and it makes sense to find a really quick audience. And to not only find them, but talk to them directly throughout, and use them as case studies and use them as mitigating evidence.
Oh, Paul, you're amazing. So, Jess, we've given you some homework. We'll report back next week. And look, we'll finish off last couple of minutes. My apology to right at the end, beautiful Thaisha. Talk to us, my darling. Lovely to see you.
How are you? Sorry that I disappeared. I'm on vacation now, so that's why I messed up. Actually, we started daylight savings, so I also messed up. So just at the end, but listening to this, I have a question. I just started last month to give contributions, stock contributions to the institute where I'm affiliated to, part-time, and they put everything on YouTube, and I am really, including real stuff and chewing very well. I like to really go over the concepts, and I know that there is plagiarism of videos into written form, and I want to avoid that.
Yes.
So I try to immediately, like it was 20 October, my first talk, they will put on YouTube. 21st, I had already a draft that I submitted to archive. Actually, I tried Cambridge Open Engage first, and then it got stuck. I said, all right, whatever. Archive then, and archive is stuck as well. I'm like, okay, so I am waiting, and thankfully they didn't put the video yet. It is I am preparing my best texts. Actually, I prepared with AI. It's not my voice, also to avoid having my voice publicly. It will be good. I want to keep doing that. This month I will prepare another one, and I don't know if there is a good way to protect the work and actually putting written in a nice way, written form, the transcript, so it can be cited and everything, just be available,
Well, that's right. So the first thing is the YouTube element is a nitro. So that it's not, or we have to publish it. That is a research output and object in and of itself. And so therefore then if you decide that iterative formation where you build on the nitro into conventional, traditional peer review, that's excellent too. But don't think for one moment that anybody can rip you off. If they do, they'll get done for it, because the nitro is a dated piece of research. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't know. Okay, awesome.
Well, we'll keep talking about this next week. Colleagues, I'm conscious of the time. Who knew this would be Jess week? Jess, do you feel like the center of the universe, Jess?
Thank you, everyone. This has been mind-blowing. This is really exciting to think that I can have this multimodal output that's accessible to everyone, not just the people sitting in their smart offices reading peer-reviewed literature.
You're our queen. So, Paul, that's our first installment. We'll return next week, probably for the next installment, about the sonically porous nature of research, I think, which is where you and I are terribly focused. But, colleagues, I thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being splendid human beings. Wonderful. I'll see you next Friday. And yes, let's move to Rat Club. See you soon, dear friends. You are a blessing to me. Bye-bye.